I'm Kevin Slavin. I entered Cooper Union in '89 and graduated in '95. I started teaching adjunct in 2011. And I was in the audience here on November 7th when Mark Epstein was asked, how did we arrive at a $60 million annual deficit without warning or hope of repair? And his answer unequivocally was that the alumni of Cooper Union were, the quote was, a failed investment. 38% of the funds outlined in the decennial report were a failed investment, not the new building, not the loans, whose interest repayments alone form half the deficit, but us. 3 weeks later, Cooper Union asked me for $10,000, and I brought that here tonight, and I'm pledging it to the contingent fund that Ariana and Ben outlined at the beginning of this evening. I pledge that it's to the Cooper Union that I went to, the Cooper Union that I am looking to invest in, the Cooper Union which is tuition-free. So, to Mr. Epstein, President Bharucha, the money is on the table, and we'll see whose investment fails who. I was on this stage in 1995. I gave the graduating speech, and it was 10 minutes. And it was composed entirely of quotes from the 20 years of graduating speeches before me. And it wasn't a cynical act. It was actually to say it didn't start when I got here, and it wasn't going to stop when I left. And so when I heard President Bharucha say in early November, I guess it was Halloween, when he talked, the phrase that struck me, I think it strikes all of us, was sustainability. And if nowhere else, I think this is the point on which President and I are in perfect alignment. I think probably all of you. We're all looking for a sustainable solution to produce another 20 years of graduating speeches for somebody else to steal from. So the question is, what is it that makes Cooper Union sustainable? What would produce sustainability? And then, what does it mean to use a resource that produces more than it's consumed? And I think that the mistake that's been made systemically is believing that the resource at the bottom of all this, the resource that has to be sustained, is money. And it's not. Money is a derivative. And the resource that it's derived from, the resource that it maps to, the resource that it measures, is trust. And we've all suffered from sort of thinking that it's the other way around. And we trust something because it's made out of money, and that's how you get stuff like Enron, that's how you get stuff like Madoff, that's how collateralized debt obligations get filled with tranches of crappy mortgages, right? And that's how you end up with a room like this one. And it's a logical fallacy. It's called ad crumentum, the logic of the purse, right? In the fallacy, the idea is that the acquisition of money means that you're allowed to administer trust. And we don't live there anymore. That's over. If anything, the acquisition of money these days doesn't provide trust. It demands it. It demands greater and greater trust. And trust is the resource that was depleted first. And I'm here tonight to talk about how it went away and what it's going to take to get it back. Because it's the deficit of trust that has made the hole unfillable. I've invested in my own companies and in big companies and in nonprofits and in New York City startups, but money has always followed trust, and that trust always came from a sense of transparency and communication, and a sense that I knew where that money was going to go. And I never gave to Cooper Union, because I could never figure it out. And I can hardly figure it out now, in spite of some rather amazing, a lot of work that went into it just tonight. I have a team of forensic accountants, actually, right, who, to their quote, say, we haven't seen anything this fucked up from anyone who wasn't being deliberately obstructive. And I want you to think about it. If somebody asked you for $10,000, It was three days ago that they asked. If somebody asked you for $10,000, whoever they are, whatever it's for, and you asked, well, can I find out how that's being spent? And get told, how actually we're not really clear about the numbers right now. We're not. Would you invest that? If somebody asked you for $10,000 and had a board of people who were going to spend that, and no one was supervising them, no one, who were accountable to no one. And if you asked, can I find out what you guys are even talking about? And they said, no. And if you said, could I actually just talk to you outside of all that? And they said, no. And you were expecting any profit from that money that you were putting into it, would you put that money in? But that's where we are. That's the room that we're in. Can you imagine a company in crisis, in the middle of a crisis, that would bar the New York Times, Reuters, and the Wall Street Journal from this room, and bring its chairman to address its shareholders with a lawyer at his side? Well, what's produced in a spectacle like that? And what's exhausted? Because the thing is that transparency is not a promise, and it's not an idea, it's action. Right? And the answer to whether Cooper Union should be more transparent, which was a question that was asked, is not the word yes. The answer is to be more transparent. And we asked on November 7th whether there were any conflicts of interest between the business operations of the Board of Trustees and the business operations of Cooper Union. The chairman said, every year the trustees fill out a conflict of interest statement and that's made public. If there's any conflict, potential conflict, or appearance of conflict involving Cooper Union, it's public. Okay. In following up on this publicness, we received the following response from TC Westcott. Regarding the conflict of interest, we can make the policy available, but not the completed questionnaires. The actual questionnaires are confidential. However, when a potential conflict is disclosed, that information appears in the 990. But a bunch of forensic accountants, when crunching the 990s, didn't see any of those. They did find one, right? Not listed as a potential conflict, just information that they puzzled together. And this is just an example, and I don't mean to give this undue weight. It was the first one. This was like a couple hours of work. And it concerns Sandra Priest Rose, who was a trustee for several years, right? Including the years in which the new building contracts were initiated and fulfilled. Between 2006 and 2009, as part of those contracts, Cooper Union paid Jonathan Rose Companies $2 million to supervise that construction. That company is run by Jonathan F.P. Rose. The trustee, Sandra Priest Rose, is his mother. Oh my God. So let me be clear, right? The Rose family does amazing things, right? For Cooper Union, for New York City, and we, all of us, we actually owe them, right? They do amazing things. Like, really. And maybe her son's company really does happen to be the very best for the job, and maybe they provided the most competitive bid. That's possible. But that's why it's a fucking question. That's right. Right? And that's why the answer is not to state policy. It's to state fact. It's to address the spirit of the question, which is not about policy. And if we'd heard about this potential conflict when we asked about potential conflicts, instead of from a bunch of forensic accountants, then we wouldn't have used up those precious resources of time and trust. And I'm happy if the Roses thrive. I actually am. I just want to know, if you ask me for $10,000 and you say it's going to be spent responsibly, I'd like to get a heads up that that responsible spending is also going to keep it in the family. It's possible to do that. I don't even discourage it. I just want to know. There's an alumni representative to the trustees, Don Blauweiss, and I offered him my spot here tonight because I would rather listen than talk. And what he said, and I don't blame him for this particularly, is that he can't because he's privy in that role to sensitive and confidential information. But if the delegate to the trustees can't speak to the group that has delegated him, what's he there for? So everybody says that we have to put the past behind us and just move forward and just build. And I say, yeah, let's build. Let's build. Okay? We are all of us here, makers, builders. And if we don't know what we're working with, how do we build? If we can't see the material, how do we work with it? Second. So I say, let's work with trust. And I challenge Cooper Union to help restore that resource, that foundation. I offer my help however I can, and I say, let's build. So after a month of pestering, a week ago, Cooper released the KPMG audited docs. I also, like Professor Stock, have my questions about the auditing, but whatever, that was good. That was great. It took a month. I don't know why, but thank you for that. Seriously, thank you. And released a bunch of numbers a couple weeks ago that were erroneous and then quickly corrected them. Thank you for that. You stopped secretly editing the website to change the mission statement of the school. Thank you. Thank you for that. You're going to have the trustees review the trustees. And I have less gratitude for that, a lot less gratitude. If you would provide us with minutes and notes and actual numbers that are germane to the financial situation, to its business interests, to its transactions, we would thank you for that. And if you would stop pretending that things are all right when we know that they are not, we would thank you for that. And if you would admit that the hole that is dug with mistruths and silence, we would thank you for that and set out to fill it with something solid. And if you would recognize that communications are not the byproduct of the institution, that the institution is a product of the communications it engages in, that is an institution that I would invest in. And I mean invest. I'm not here to pay back the education I got. That's called a student loan. When I give, I'm funding the education for the future. That's not repaying something. That's investing in something. And as an investor, I challenge the president and the board. I challenge you to find the real resources: transparency, communication, trust, and integrity. Resources that can be renewed endlessly. And I will break my back to build on those, and I know that that's true of everybody here. Thank you.